The South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, described how she was adamantly against Israel's admission as an observer to the African Union during last month's Dilemmas of Humanity conference. This specific incident precipitated the expulsion of an Israeli diplomat during the 36th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa in February of this year. She said, "I don't want us to pretend that life is easy. The world is a very troubled place. It isn't. The world we live in is full of challenges." This became clear to me in 2021 when, while attending an Executive Council of the African Union Conference, I overheard a whisper inform me that Israel had received an invitation to join the African Union as an observer from the chairperson of the African Union Commission. To my dismay, I made the decision to raise my arm and suggest that this decision be revoked right then and there. I made my way around the room looking for 54 nation fans. Even though I only received 3, I still declared that this would not occur. So I raised my arm and said, "I would like to bring up a topic that I have learned about. We in South Africa oppose it, and it should not be put into effect. We will never accept it as South Africa, and we want our politicians to talk about it. Even while we are grateful for the part the Organization of African Unity played in helping us become independent, we will have to think about whether or not we can still be a part of the African Union in light of the AU Commission chairperson's decision. You may be asking how Israel's relations with Africa came to be in a position where it was allowed to attend the summit of the African Union. In order to understand this, let's take a quick look back in time. Israel used to be an observer in the Organization of African Unity, OAU, the old Union of African Nations. Certain organizations grant non-members the privilege of observer status, which allows them to participate in the organization's activities. Usually observers are not very involved in the organization because they cannot cast votes or make resolution proposals. However, Israel's status as an observer ended in 2002 with the dissolution of the OAU. The African Union, AU, the organization that replaced it, was disbanded, was established to take the position of the OAU as the continent's current bloc organization. Since only African nations were eligible to join, there was no observer status offered when it first started. Let's go back to 2021. Following years of diplomatic efforts to get observer status with the AU, Moussa Faki Mahamat was named as the Commission's chairperson, 19 years after the OAU was dissolved, unilaterally consented to Israel's observation. "This is a day of celebration for Israel-Africa relations," said Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yair Lapid, in response to this development. Israel's embassies throughout the continent, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and its African division have all worked tirelessly to win this diplomatic victory. It's a critical step towards fortifying Israel's foreign policy and rectifies the abnormality that has endured for almost 20 years. It will improve our communication with the organization's member states and the nations of Africa. Before this, Israel had ties to 46 African nations, cultivating broad alliances and cooperative endeavors in a range of areas, such as aid and trade. The chairperson's unilateral acceptance of Israel did not sit well with South Africa, which was represented by Naledi Pandor and a number of other bloc members. The African Union was rocked by demonstrations and outcry over this decision, especially from Algeria and South Africa, who claimed it went against the AU's declarations endorsing the occupied Palestinian territory. A committee of heads of state was formed last year to discuss the possibility of Israel's accreditation as an observer being revoked in response to these worries. Tensions regarding Israel's standing within the organization were highlighted earlier this year, in February, when senior Israeli ambassador Sharon Barley was forcefully removed from the African Union's annual meeting in Ethiopia. The diplomat was withdrawn because, according to Eba Kalando, the spokeswoman for the chairperson of the African Union, she was not the officially authorized Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia. Before we go any further, if you think this video is interesting, kindly support us by giving it a like, sharing it, and becoming a channel subscriber. That being stated, let's move forward. Later, an AU official told the AFP news agency that only Israel's ambassador to the African Union, Aleli Admasou, had received a non-transferable invitation to the meeting, and that the diplomat who was ordered to leave had not. The official continued, "It is unfortunate that the person in question would misuse such a courtesy. Last year we discussed the question of Israel's status as an observer in the African Union," said Musa Faki Mohammed, head of the AU Commission, a day after the Israeli delegation was kicked out of the summit's opening ceremony. The conference resolved to form an ad hoc committee of heads of state to consider the matter after these diverse debates. Hence, the statute is put on hold till this group convenes. Therefore, we declined to invite officials from Israel to our summit. When we discovered that a personality had worn a badge to enter the room, we immediately requested him to leave. He doesn't live here, so we are currently conducting the required inquiries. He arrived from Israel, and he is always welcome to this place. The African Union Commission chairperson has invited him. The representative wasn't invited. The foreign minister of Israel criticized the decision to remove the Israeli ambassador from the summit. He declared, "Israel views with harshness the incident in which Ambassador Sharon Barley, the Deputy Director for Africa, was forcibly removed from the African Union Hall in spite of her accreditation as an observer bearing entry badges." Israel attributed the event to two important countries in the 55-country bloc, Algeria and South Africa, claiming they were motivated by hatred and were holding the AU hostage. However, South Africa refuted the assertion, claiming Israel's application for observer status at the AU had not been approved upon by the bloc. The Israeli ambassador's dismissal was motivated only by moral convictions. Israel's occupation of Palestine has long been criticized by South Africa and the ruling party. The South African government has declared its solidarity for the Palestinian people and denounced Israel's war on Gaza. Pandor further disclosed that in the course of mobilizing international opposition to Israel's observer status, she came to the conclusion that established oppressors and continuous colonial occupiers use their financial clout to give grants and aid to African states, thereby obtaining depoliticized backing from these African states for their oppressive agendas. Particularly identified as countries with a particularly bad influence in Africa are Israel and Morocco. Regarding Morocco, its difficult relations with various African countries became clear. The fact that the nation did not even belong to the African Union until 2017 underscores how complicated its relationships with the continent are. What are your thoughts on this? Tell us in the comments below.